as I mentioned before, I wanted to do some introductory videos before we get into the basic concepts and the revelations that brought this project into being. So this is going to be the last of the introductory videos, but the concept that I'm discussing is fundamental to the whole rest of the project. So this is a very important video, and please watch this before you watch the videos that are to come after. The concept that I want to discuss in this video is the concept of cycles. Now, what I mean by cycles are repeating patterns that move basically in a predictable, repeatable way. And the way that sort of we could graphically represent that would be the idea of a cycle going around and around and around. And we see this sort of cycle when describing many things in our world. And so you'll usually see a graphic that's like, okay, you start at this point, then it turns into this, to this, to this, to this, whether that's like the life cycle, the digestive cycle, all of these graphical representations. And the reason why cycles are so important is because they are fundamental to our understanding of spirituality and to the progress of humanity in expanding our world and our universe. The expansion of our universe usually comes with the understanding of a new cycle. I'll give you an example. The understanding of the cycle of day, night, having this predictable cycle as part of our consciousness allows us to do a great many things, right? Allows planning, at least day-to-day planning. Allows us to understand, okay, if I'm hunting or I'm gathering, when I hear certain birds and then I see a certain amount of light in the sky, that means to start. And when the sun has moved to a certain place and there's not as much light in the sky, that means to stop and to go home. And because what's going to happen is there's going to be no light in the sky for a period of hours, and then this whole process is going to start over again. And early human beings very much lived in that way. That cycle, day to day to day, a day-to-day life, right? And especially in temperate climates where the seasons don't change, that's pretty much how you live if you're a primitive individual. As you move into different latitudes, you need to start having understandings of bigger cycles. And those bigger cycles is going to be months. It's going to relate to planting and harvesting, because you know that, okay, when the sun is in this particular place in the sky, and when this number of days have passed, and the weather is in this certain place, that's the time to start planting, because these plants need a certain amount of time, and then we're going to harvest, and then it's going to be winter, and then we're going to start all over again. So that's an understanding of the seasonal cycle, the yearly cycle. Even before that, you have the monthly cycle, which is the lunar cycle, right? And that's built in even to our bodies, which I'll discuss in a minute. But to understand that the moon goes from full to the empty new moon, back to a full moon, boom. And there's a certain number of months that correspond to seasonal behavior, these types of things, these cycles, right? And these have always been associated in with early man and early spirituality as an aspect of religion, right? It's like it's right in there with religion and spirituality. You can't take the cycles out, the cycle of the moon, the cycle of the sun. Like these things are embedded into spirituality. And in some cultures, I mean, they are the spirituality, right? The worship of the sun, these sorts of things. So as our knowledge expanded, our understanding of the cycle and the ramifications of the cycle expanded. Like our understanding that there is a sequence of day to night didn't necessarily change, but our understanding that we're on a globe, the sun is here, relative to the earth, and that the earth is turning, and that's what's giving the appearance of the sun rising and the sun setting. And not only is the earth turning, but the earth is turning on an axis, and that's what's giving you different seasons in different latitudes at different times of the year. I mean, now you can start planning. Now you can start predicting. But even further, when we understand that, well, the year is us going all the way around the sun in a rotation, that starts to give us a whole other understanding of our world and of the universe. And when we understand that, oh yeah, there are cycles of the planets. The planets are also going around the sun, and that's what's making them move in different places relative to us. Now we have an understanding that the sun is going around the center of the Milky Way, and that there's an interplay with gravitational pull between objects in the solar system that are also moving, like comets, right? So now we know, okay, it's not just years, it could be decades, it could be centuries, but we're able, because we have a great understanding of these cycles, and now we've developed mathematical equations to figure them out, that we say, okay, we know that this particular comet is not only going to pass by the Earth at this, time, on this day, 300 years from now, when none of us will even be alive, but we could pretty accurately predict how close it will be. In the vein of prophecy, that is on a level of any Mayan prophecy or ancient Jewish prophet. So you have to start to think, well, the power of prophecy comes with the knowledge of the power of cycles. If you're someone who understands a cycle better than another population, and you understand the signs and what it means as things move through, you're able to make a lot of predictions that other individuals are unable to make. You gain the power of prophecy by the understanding of a cycle, not by some crazy metaphysical thing that comes in, not by some woo-woo spirituality. We are able to predict the future because we have knowledge of the past and an understanding of the framework of the cycle that is the context of what we're talking about. That's how we can make prophecy. That's what predicting the future is. So, we as a species, gaining our power, our technological power. Think about it. There is no agriculture, or there is no culture without agriculture. But even the word culture, agriculture, the root of cult is a circle, is the cycle. Right? That's the root of it, of the word culture, is about a cycle. We being born, and as a species, life developing on this planet, within all of these cycles, the solar cycle, the lunar cycle, the galactic cycle, you would expect that there would be internal cycles within anything that came up within a framework of a cycle. Everything is in cycles. The galaxies are spinning around each other. What we don't think about on a daily basis is the fact that cycles are built into us on a biological level, and it is our biology that has evolved our mind, and our minds are working within cycles as well. I'm going to give you the example of just how that is. I mean, look, every woman has a cycle. There's debate of whether it's tied to the moon or not, but it's essentially in lock 28 days with a lunar cycle. And if everything is sort of regular within a woman, and her diet doesn't change, and her basic daily activities and her stress level doesn't change, and there's no fundamental disease that's going on with her, in periods of time of like a year, that cycle is predictable. she can predict 6 months from now whether or not she's going to be bleeding on any given day. Prophecy. We've measured now that human beings and many other animals and plants, we have internal rhythms. They're called circadian rhythms, right? Circadian, the root circa, meaning circle, and then DM, meaning day. So it's the circle of the day, the cycle of the day. We have circadian rhythms within us that determine where our brain waves are at certain times, at what point we get tired, at what point we're the most alert, at what point we have the highest metabolic rate. All of these things, it's in a cycle within us that's happening every day. So we have a daily cycle. But again, noticing a cycle, then being able to utilize the cycle, and then being able to scientifically describe the cycle effectively to a point where you can make some inventions and some innovations and utilize the cycle are 3 separate steps. And in the first step, just the recognizing of the cycle, it appears to the population as something spiritual. The seasons, the sun moving across the sky, and that every day it comes back. Every day it's back. Well, that must be a god. And for early cultures, that's a god. That's brought on by God. And then understanding that we're on a planet and that it's moving around the sun, and that's what does that, expands the world again. But that still does not take us to the point where we can start to mathematically understand what it's going to take for us to leave this planet and hit another planet that's on a similar rotational curve. There's a step between those. So, if we as individuals have cycles within us, and society is no more than a group of individuals, or is it more? I guess that's the question that we're going to explore. Is there more? Is society more than just the sum of its parts? Is a forest more than a group of trees? Right? All of the trees as a group in a forest have actually a sort of if things between them are measured, you get a organic response as though they are almost a single organism, right? Our ecosystems are made up of many different organisms, but working together, they sort of represent a single life form. Our bodies, we as multicellular organisms are an example of that, right? Each of our cells is the evolution of a single-celled organism that for one reason or another, in terms of adaptation, glommed onto another and became a multi-cell organism. We are in a series of living things, and not just those things that have our DNA. But I mean, there are bacteria and fungus operating inside of our body in a balance, the flora and fauna of our body that keep us healthy, right? Probiotics. It's ingesting other organisms, getting things back, the fungus to bacteria balance. And all of those things have their own internal cycles. So we know that groups of organisms together with their cycles can contribute to a larger cycle that is the human cycle. Because my circadian rhythms can be thrown off by me having an imbalance of the flora or fauna in my body. Because, or the reason why this concept is important is because what we would like to be able to do in our society, and what would be very powerful, would be for us to notice and to see a cycle existing within human society throughout history, across cultures, and to be able to see where we are at any given time within that cycle, to know what was coming next. Because if we knew what was coming next, and we understood the ramifications of that next step. In other words, if we had the power of prophecy about where the world was going, about where human society was going, about what we could expect in the big picture, in the coming years, or in the coming centuries even, think of the power that that would give to the individuals who had that knowledge. The future, in a meaningful, big picture way that deals with the fate of humanity, that deals with the social organizational structure, would be predictable. Would be predictable. There would be little need for people to control it or to attempt to control it, because there would be an understanding that it can't be controlled. Sure, you can do some things to knock a woman's cycle out of whack, but it will find its balance again. Our circadian rhythms will get thrown off if we're doing massive study sessions, or we go out and we're partying like crazy, or we take a new job that the hours are different. You know, we go from a day shift to a night shift. Our circadian rhythms are thrown off, but what happens? They find their equilibrium again. Because that's how a cycle works. So what if such a cycle exists in all of human society? And what if it's been there this whole time? And some have known about it and some have discussed it. But what if we're reaching a point where we can actually take advantage of it? That's what we're going to talk about moving forward. So, the next video is the revelation that led me down this path. If you want to have a further discussion on this, facebook.com/VinArmani. I'd love to hear your thoughts so far. And moving forward, let's turn this into a conversation, because really, that's what's needed in this case. A conversation, a back and forth. Let's understand the cycle and let's benefit from it.